Good morning. It's a great honor for me to be on stage with an industry pioneer. I'm with Mr. Adnan Ahmed Yousif, who's the president and chief executive of the Al Baraka Banking Group. And we're here to share his insights on sort of where Islamic finance is today, what the future looks like, particularly in the sort of the near future. Before we start these questions, I just want to say that I'd like the session to be interactive as far as possible. So if you have any questions from the floor, please raise your hand. We'll have someone bring out a microphone, and so you can ask a question as well. So any time during the session. So Mr. Adnan, I'd like to start with just a question on sort of how things stand right now. I mean, earlier in the year, you had noted that 2014 was going to be a growth year for your bank. You were looking at entry into Morocco and Libya and expanding in Tunisia. So how has the year shaped up for you so far? And so what else are you looking to accomplish?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Sorry.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. And I'd like to wish you Ramadan Mubarak from now, because we might not see you now after this meeting. Therefore, we say that Ramadan Mubarak for everybody here. As far as our expansion, that we are now operating in 15 countries with over 500 branches. And our plan is by 2015, we have to reach 700 branches worldwide. And Morocco and Libya was the two countries in the North African which has not been covered by our presence. We are operating in Algeria as well as in Tunis, and if you can consider also Egypt as part of the North African region. But Morocco is a new market. Morocco has not opened for Islamic banking except recently. And when we saw that there is opportunity for expanding there, we thought that we could involve. And for your info, as far as the major shareholder of Al Baraka, which is Dalla, they are involved in Morocco for the past maybe 20 or 25 years. They own a few hotels and a few plants and factories in Morocco. Therefore, our penetration in that market is not new to the group as well. As far as Libya, Libya also is a new market for us as far as an Islamic banks. Although that, recently, that the situation in Libya has not improved, but we anticipate that, hopefully by end of this year, we have to start the dialogue again. But in Libya, we have a rep office, and the rep office handle all our business.
Right. That's an interesting point you're touching on, sort of the political situation in the Middle East, and we know that political turmoil particularly has affected a lot of institutions. So how would you say the so-called Arab Spring has affected your bank or the Islamic banking industry as a whole in the region? And what are some of the lessons you've learned?
Well, on my lessons, we learned something. I think that, 5 years ago, I take a decision on my own, especially in Egypt. Egypt, we decide to do two things which create a lot of hassle for us, but it work in our favor. Number one, we never get involved in business which managed or owned by politicians at all. Okay? Therefore, although that, most of the businessmen, they do have relationship with the governments and the presidents and everybody, and they used to call Mr. Sheikh Saleh Kamel, and he called me and he said that, Adnan, why you don't do business with this company? I said, well, no, this company is very good company. Everybody, wish to create a relationship with them, but for us, we cannot. He said, why? I said, well, he's very close to the president. He said, well, everybody in Egypt are very close to the president. Number two, we never get involved in financing the project in tourism. And that's why I think that most of the banks has been affected in that sector. As far as, also that, most of the businessmen in Egypt who has been or who has a relationship with the previous regime has been affected. Therefore, if you see our figures as far as Egypt, you will find that our growth for 2013 was about 15% on the profit side. On the first quarter, we show 17% growth in profits. We thank God that we have not been involved. As far as Tunis, we were more or less an offshore, although that we have 10 branches in Tunis, but we are under what we call it, the system at that time, which classified Al Baraka as an offshore. From 2014, the central banks provide us with approval to be a full commercial license domestically. Therefore, that now we are penetrating the Tunisian market by increasing our branches from 10 branches to 25 branches by the beginning of 2015. As far as Syria, although that we have 10 branches there, no, the operation in Syria is working okay. You know, most of this, what we call the media, is create a lot of, hassle for people, as far as involvement in Syria. But as far as the operation in Syria, no, it worked okay. As far as Yemen, we don't have a presence there. Sudan, we have 30 branches, and it worked very nice. I mean, there is nothing wrong there.
I see. There was I remember sort of you doing an interview with a Reuters colleague of mine, I think early in the year, and one of the statements that sort of jumped out to me was that you said that the Gulf is currently overbanked. And how is that sort of shaping your bank strategy of looking sort of outside the Middle East now?
Well, I think that, most of the banks now, the big banks in the Middle East, are having a lot of challenges facing them because they are becoming very big compared to the market they are operating in. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the only alternative they have is two. Either they acquire banks, which is very expensive, or they go to a new market, which has two problems also. It is a new market. That means there is a lot of high risk there. And furthermore, the return, they have to wait for a while till, they get back a kind of investment on the return. And if they decide to acquire a bank in the countries they want to go, it will be also very expensive. So therefore, that the banks who has not expanded, in the past, they will face a lot of challenges in expanding business. And I always say that, I'm not in favor of merging always, because sometimes you merge, a weak institution with a weak institution, you create another weak institution. It does not add anything. Unless it is, a good bank with a reasonable good bank, then yes, you might establish a very good organization. But, when you put the two together and both of them, they are very weak, you just create a weak institution. So therefore, that I believe that the banks in the Middle East who has not expanded, are going to face problem. The second problem, which is we are all now facing, is the weakness in the currencies. Mm-hmm. And the weakness in currencies reflect very badly on the consolidated balance sheets. Now, for everybody, that for us, we are always having a lot of challenges because when we consolidate our balance sheet, we consolidate it in dollar. Mm. And we have 15 currencies, and we have 15 international accounting standards. In every country, they have their own. Then you combine them according to the international accounting standard, and then you have the IOFIs, because Bahrain applied the IOFIs standards. So it is a lot of, kind of a complicated exercise. I think that this is one of the things which we are talking about, the hedging and the others for the currencies, which I think that banks now need to review this very carefully.
Right. Before we go to the next question, is there any question from the audience? Okay, so the second part of that question that I was going to say is, so what is your strategy now of looking outside the Middle East? I mean, are you looking at Asia? What are you currently looking at?
Well, that we have what we call it the medium or the middle. I will say that the medium. I will put it on this way. We have two countries which we are very, very, very interested to penetrate. Indonesia and India. Okay. Although that we have been in India in the past, unfortunately we sold our license to our partner in India. And at that time it was not a bank, it was like an investment bank in India. Maybe it was created in 1988. And we have a very good partner, but unfortunately at that time, regulation in India was not supporting Islamic banking, or they have not looked to the Islamic banking in favor. And therefore we decide to exit that country. Indonesia is becoming a very active, and it is a new market, and it's something which, maybe because also I work in this part of the world, therefore the Indonesia always, I find it's a new market and expanding I think that it will expand very well in the coming years. So therefore, that these are the two markets for the Asian side. Furthermore, China, although that China has been a closed market for both traditional banks as well as Islamic banks, but now also they are open for Islamic bank. We did have a discussion with the Chinese, and they show a keen interest to let Al Baraka Bank there in.
I see. In what ways would you say that Islamic banking in Asia is different from Islamic banking in the Middle East? I mean, in terms of product or market?
Well, yesterday I was listening to the issues of the Sharia's dispute or Sharia's problems, and I did mention that 93% of the Sharia's they have already agreed on most of the fatwas, and the difference is just only the 7%. And 7% is a very small margin, I mean, to play with. As far as the market, it is because that every market has its own Sharia's principles and school of thoughts. That here in the Far East we have, or in Asia, you have most Shafi'is and Ahnaf, and they have their own school of thoughts and their own difference in the Sharias. And in the Gulf also they have the Malkis and the others. But therefore there is a little bit different. Market is different, regulation is different, central banks' views is different. I mean, when you come, for example, to the Gulf countries, I think that I would say that the Islamic banking is a little bit stronger, both from the banks as well as from the regulator. And I always say that, thank God that to the Central Bank of Bahrain, I think that they did a very good job in pushing the Islamic banking. And I always say that, if Bahrain has not decided to sponsor the Islamic banking, we will not see these Islamic banking products, worldwide. They took an initiative in 1985 to create a division within the central banks to supervise Islamic banking. And at that time, 1985, was just, there are just a few Islamic banks operating both locally and internationally. So therefore, that it has a different structure vis-a-vis every market has its own structure as far as Islamic views.
Right. And in your opinion, as we, from where we stand right now, what are the main challenges you'd say that sort of the growth of Islamic banking and finance faces today globally?
Well, I think that, Islamic banking, we have to also to be realistic. I mean, we just been in existing close to 40, 45 years, and we cannot compare ourselves with the traditional banks. They have been in operation over, God knows, 300 years. So therefore, the systems is there. Furthermore, we should not forget that the central banks, our education systems, I mean, most of us now, we are sitting here, we have been involved in the universities. Our education is more or less completely different from the Islamic banking. But therefore, I think that the Islamic banking will take a long time to penetrate the markets. But the achievement they did within a very short period, I think that was a very good achievement. But we have to make sure that we don't grow very, very fast, as they say, as the regulators say here from Singapore, that when you have a high liquidity and very fast growth, it creates also bad loans, or create a lot of hassles for the institution. And that's why we have the crisis. Crisis in 2008. I did announce in 2007 in France, in a conference which was sponsored by the government, by the president. And at that time, I was the chairman of the Union Arab Banks, and I did say that we are going to have a crisis. I never anticipate such kind of a crisis, but I was anticipating that there will be a very big crisis because of two. We involve in the products we don't understand. And the second one is the lending activity was very, very, very high. And these two ratios always, if you have it, you know, you always, it will follow, you know, a crisis. And thank God that Islamic banks has not been quoted there because of two Sharia's principles. Islamic banking, they have not been involved in the American housing loans because Islamic banks, or we are not supposed to buy assets. Because when you buy assets, you cannot create any kind of things to the economy at all. The second thing is we don't get involved in derivatives because Islam prohibits us to sell something you don't own it. But therefore, all these swaps and, you know, options and interest rate swaps, you know, just, you know, you are inflating your balance sheets and there is no result for the economy, and it creates a lot of hassles, and that's why most of the European and American still they are going around how they can justify these things. And as I say also, the European, they make a big mistakes when they create a lot of provisions which wiped out the whole capital, and then they ask the banks to readjust their capital adequacy. You cannot ask investor to come whereby there is a crisis. Therefore, it was a very, very bad, you know, exercise. You know, banks face it 3 or 4 years. Coming back to the Islamic banking, I think that, you know, they are doing okay.
Right. Again, are there any questions from the audience? Yes, please. Can we have a microphone?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. My question is twofold. You mentioned your strategy in North Africa vis-a-vis Tunisia and Morocco. I believe Al Baraka has a long presence in Tunisia for more than 20 years. And as you very rightly mentioned now, the regulatory environment is opening up, and then Al Baraka plans to expand in that market. Now, talking about Morocco, I just need to understand what sort of a strategy you are planning for Morocco. Is it that you want to have an independent, standalone Al Baraka presence, or you want to go for a joint venture with some bank in that market? That's one. The other question is that you just mentioned about the expansion strategy of Al Baraka globally. I want to understand what is the strategy for Al Baraka vis-a-vis the multinational banks, because a lot of multinational banks now are offering Islamic globally through window operations. So I need to understand what sort of a strategy Al Baraka is having to you know, compete with such environment. Thank you.
The first questions, you know, I was talking about both Morocco and Libya. Because Tunis, as you mentioned it, that we have an operation in Tunis for over 25 years. As far as our existing or how we always go to the markets, we have a very clear strategy. We don't go to the market on our own. We always create a subsidiary. It carry our name, it carry our managements, it has our management, and it carry our kind of Sharia's principles as far as Al Baraka Group. Therefore, in Morocco, we will go there with what the law allowed us. For example, if they allowed us 60%, we'll take the 60%. 40%, we will leave it for the shareholders within Morocco, because we are always considering ourselves that we want to add to the market. And if you want to add to the market, you have to have a local partner with you from the local markets. Therefore, if the Moroccans law accept for the foreigners to take 60%, that means we'll take 60% as far as Al Baraka, and the 40% will be from the Moroccan markets. The second question is vis-a-vis how we can go internationally. We apply the same kind of methods where we go. Tomorrow, if India allowed us, we will go there with the majority shareholders, and the minority will be for the Indian. As far as the windows, Islamic windows, although that that they have been operating in different countries, but they have not been involved locally or domestically to the low levels, whereby our strategy is to go to that small level, medium-sized level, and the big levels. Most of these windows financing, Islamic financing, has been focusing on certain segmentation of markets. When we go to the countries, we go as a full, with a full, providing full products to the markets. We don't just take part of the segmentations and provide them with the facilities which we believe that we think. Furthermore, our strategy also is a difference. It does not mean that what I applied in Morocco, I'm going to apply it in Bangladesh or I'm going to apply it in Pakistan. No. I applied Morocco for Moroccan markets. I might use the methodologies, but the structure and the Sharia's structure and the banking structure will be subject to the regulator there in these countries. So therefore that, this is what we do as far as Al-Baraka Group.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. You have mentioned two countries, Indonesia and India. My question is just an easy question. Do you have any partners in these two countries, or you have a strategy to penetrate the market in these two countries, especially in Indonesia, also in general in this region? Or you have any intention to open the branches or operation, or any enlarge your operation in these two countries, especially in Indonesia? Thank you.
Well, in Indonesia, we opened a rep office in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, and I think that the representative of our Indonesian office is here in the conference, Mr. Mus Mukhtar. I don't know whether he's somewhere. Oh, he's there. And if we expand in the market, what we are going to do is we are going to apply the same methodology, i.e. that means we will own the majority, it will carry our name, it will have our management, and we will have a strategic partner from Indonesia. We do have a few names of the Indonesian businessmen who has shown an interest in case we decide to penetrate in that market. By the way, in 2009, we were very close to acquire a bank, a Chinese bank in Indonesia, to convert it to Islamic banks. But because of the crisis, we decided to slow it down. Thank you.
Right. Is there any more questions from the audience? Oh, yes, please. Can we have the right here?
Thank you. Mr. Adnan, you have, mashallah, presence in 15 countries. How do you, between these different entities, take care of the unification? Is there any sort of unification happening? How it is working? So sort of the, standardizing the effort, of these operations.
Yes, we do. I mean, Al-Baraka is a little bit strange. Normally in the banking sector, we get used to have the mother, and from the mother you have the branches. In Al-Baraka, unfortunately, the branches has been created, and then we create the mother or the parent. So therefore, there is a lot of things to be done to bring it and consolidate it within the group. And what we did in the group is we standardized the credit policies, the operation, the ITs, everything we standardize it. And however, we give the units the flexibility whereby we say that this is our policies. You try to apply it according to your law. Okay? And if you find that our policy is better than the policies which is available in your country, then you applied ours. If you find that your policy or your regulators are stronger on certain issues, then you applied your regulators' requirements. So we do have a standardized for all the things, but as I say that clearly that we keep a little bit flexible for every market because every market has its own kind of environments, and we have to respect that kind of things in every market. But as far as standardization, we have it in all the groups, and we are auditing all the units from the head office, and we review all their credit application in a certain levels. It is reviewed by the head office. Thank you.
Great. We just have 2 or 3 minutes left on the clock, so I just want to finish off with a question looking ahead. So in the next year or two, what are some of the key trends you expect to see in the global Islamic banking industry?
Well, I think that, Basel III, I always try to avoid saying that because sometimes, that I've been quoted always. I think that, Basel III should be reviewed carefully because it does not apply for Islamic banking and it does not apply for retail banks. Basel III, I believe, this is my own opinion, could be applied only for investment banks, not for us. But anyhow, regulator always, that they try to follow what is in the international market, which we call it, they call it the best practice. I think that, every market has to review it according to their own principles and on their practice. Every country has its own best practice. I don't, believe that, practice in other countries should be applied. That is nothing wrong with that. It is good to try to review the others and apply yours. We have already suffered from the others. I mean, most of our crisis, it came from, market which we thought about it, they done the best practice, and it seemed to me that they have not. So therefore, that we should be very careful in applying things which it can be improved, it can be studied, and it can be filtered through our systems. So therefore, I'm a great believer that everybody or every country has its own best practice, and they can do it on their own. I don't, think that we were, started with Basel II. By the time we finished Basel II, we got Basel III. God knows about Basel IV and V and VI. That we will continue to see too many Basels, within a very short period. So therefore, that what I'm saying that challenges which is going to face Islamic banking is two: the new regulations which is applied, and the Basel III is one of them, and two is the growth. Where we are going to grow. That we have reached to a level of a good ratio of growth for the past many years. So therefore now we have to make sure that we continue our growth to enable us to continue our profits. So therefore challenges will be facing Islamic banking is where we are going. So therefore that I think that, as I say earlier in my presentation, that banks who has not expanded regionally and internationally, they might have some difficulties in growing the same ratios in their own markets.
I see. So our time is up now. It's 10:45, and I'd like to thank Mr. Adnan Ahmed Yousif very much for his time. Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you.